Getting back to GEM though, we wrote a GEM grant in 2017, 2016. We ran it for about 3 years, and it was a fall GEM grant called Follow the Mural Brick Road. And what we wanted to do was to encourage people to come up. This is not weather dependent, so it's a perfect type of event to promote. And they could go from Butternut all the way up to Madeline Island and see the beautiful murals of Ashland County. So we called it Follow the Mural Brick Road. And again, there are murals in every county community in Ashland, so we're so proud of that. Which we ended up taking that money, Ashland and Bayfield County, investing in our new 2-county bicycle map. The bicycle map is at the printers right now and will be available soon. It's going to be our second reprint because these are all on-road bicycle trails throughout Ashland and Bayfield County. The partnership started back in the 90s with the Ashland Chamber and Ashland County Tourism. I'm not sure why it was put in the Forestry and Rec Department. I suppose because it was recreation, but that's where it's been all these years. You'll see the many line items on there. But prior to 2009, Ashland and Bayfield County joined forces. Our tourism departments did. We each put in $10,000 out of the marketing budget that we had, and we created a 2-county visitor guide. We also marketed with that $20,000, trying to get people to come into the 2-county area, realizing that people didn't really know when they passed the Ashland County line and when they went into the Bayfield County line were too small. And we really had the idea of bringing them in, and then the communities could take over from there. With that being said, in 2009, the old Bayfield County Tourism Director retired, and a new person came in, and they ended up that they would really like to do Bayfield County tourism on their own, so they decided that they would separate from Ashland County. Well, then we had to start doing some things on our own. With the budget that we had, we really couldn't do it by ourselves. So we stepped up again, the chamber, and decided we would be the partner that Bayfield County used to be. So I really think it's important that you know that when we do ads for waterfalls, or when we do ads for Madeline Island, or when we do ads for murals, that we are paying for a lot of those ads out of the chamber budget. Although the county does pay for some of them, they don't take on all of the cost of this. You'll have some sheets that can explain that a little bit better. Right now, I am at Marion Park in Glidden. They're getting ready for the Labor Day County Fair. Or the Labor Day Area Fair, I should say. And this is where the tractor pull is. This place is going to be hopping. If you haven't been here to Glidden, you need to come down here. There's so much to see. And that's what we try and promote. These little areas, it's beautiful here. Well, we've been talking about fishing, we've been talking about murals and art, and of course the granddaddy of them all is waterfalls. We produced the waterfalls brochure about 2 years ago. We've gone through about maybe 30,000 copies so far. It's really a hot seller. Waterfalls in all of the 4 counties from Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, and Iron County. That's the place to be. So one of the other hot spots for our automobile tour is the tunnel mural. And the tunnel mural is so cool because it has all sorts of animals, and each animal has the Ojibwe meaning for each animal. Also, there's a scavenger hunt, so you can bring your kids. Hey, if family are visiting friends, bring them on down to the tunnel. It's really cool, and the view of Lake Superior is amazing. So, can I stand? Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me? I'm more of a stander, I think. So I obviously had brought that video to the Finance Committee just to talk a little bit about the relationship between the county and the chamber. And I think it's really important just to know that we eat, sleep, drink, everything is tourism at the chamber. And that I really hope that you will understand that this isn't about the city of Ashland. This is about the whole county. This is about representing the county, especially the communities that can't represent themselves because they don't have a chamber. This is about Clam Lake and the beautiful elk and sending people down to look at the collared elk. It's about butternut and like I showed you, Bobby's place on Butternut Lake, and it's really fun and crafty. The Butternut Cafe is a great place. If you've never been there, you got to go. You can watch them cook. They have good food. It's affordable. They have murals down there. This is about Mellon and Glidden. This is about the Marion Park. If you haven't been there, just go take a peek at it. And it's about Mellon and John Whalen and his crew at their chamber. They're a part-time chamber. It's about Odana, and I'm so excited, especially to have Philomena in her position now and to be able to start really looking at how Odana maybe will come up with some retail, and maybe I was talking to her about a cultural center would be really cool, and a mural, and there's just so many beautiful things. And of course, Madeline Island. Madeline Island, if you've never been to the lagoon, it's the most beautiful place on earth, I think. It's even better than the Boundary Waters. You walk out and then there's the expanse of the Lake Superior. So this is not about the city of Ashland. This is about the county communities that we all represent when we're promoting tourism. So I guess my biggest request for you today is to keep the $35,000 in tourism in the budget, and I would also request that the chamber pay the ITVAC cost of $3,000. It's in a line item budget. We'd be happy to pay that. I am on that committee. I'm the vice chair of that committee. It's a really dynamite committee of tourism people, representatives throughout the 12 counties. But the return on investment from tourism is clean, it's fresh, it's a quick economic return. And for the amount of money that is spent here, I think you see that you get a lot of bang for your buck. I'd be willing to come in front of the board every quarter with my group of county tourism people from Madeline Island to Butternut, and we could show you some of the things that we're doing, whatever you want. But I think it's really important that we keep some sort of return here on something that's bringing fresh money into our communities, and to help those that can't. They don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the personnel to be able to have a visitor guide in that. I'd entertain any questions, comments, jokes, riddles? Yes.
I am so happy that we are looking at our part of the town, Glidden, Butternut, because we never get no recreations or no recommendations, no nothing over that way. It's basically all about Ashland. So I'm very proud of what you're doing.
Thank you. We
Yes.
love Southern County.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Mary, when you said there's $1.5 million that comes in from tourism, how many other businesses in Ashland County can bring that much money into tourism besides you guys?
Well, that's a good question. Let me back that up though. That's sales tax. It's
Okay.
1.5 million from sales tax. And of
Okay.
course, we can't take credit for all of that. But
Right.
even if you looked at 30%, let me back that up a little bit. Economic impact wise, Ashland County brings in $30 million of direct visitor spending. That was in 2020 during
Okay.
COVID. So out of that money, if you just think throughout Ashland, the retail sales from hotels, restaurants, retail, if you took 30% of that, that's $500,000. Even if we took 10% of that, that's still $150,000 of coming back into fresh. And I call it fresh money, which simply means that people from Minnesota, Chicago, Illinois, we want their money. We are money hungry.
And one more question, Mary. I have to correct you on something. You
Yes.
said that people come from Minneapolis and Chicago. They also come from Australia and Finland, because at the murals, I have had people come from Australia on a bike tour in northern Wisconsin. And that was the first thing they went to, was the murals.
I know, murals are great.
Murals are absolutely the
are.
best tourism thing we have.
So
Mary, I have a question. How many people do you have working out of your office?
I usually have 3.5, but like everybody else, we're trying to hire. So we're at 2.1.
And I guess the reason I ask that question is point out that when we're hiring Mary, we're not just hiring Mary, we're hiring her office and her staff to support this as well. And I agree with the comments that have already been made about this is about taking care of the southern part of the county and the outreaches of the county. And, you know, I hope we can reinstate that 25,000 that's been taken away too, because we get a lot for that. And it isn't just all about the city. I'm here representing a ward in the city, but this is the right thing to do to keep the funding where it's at. And it's still a bargain even at that price. Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
I'd like to kind of reiterate what Matt just said. I went on the Chamber's website this morning just to get an idea of some of the things that they promote. One of the things they have is travel itinerary, and it's a suggestion of things to do in Ashland County. It talks about staying in Ashland, but then it says a day's respite in Butternut, and it shows things to do in Butternut, a weekend escape to Glidden, an idyllic 3-day trip to Madeline Island, a scenic getaway to Mellon. So they're promoting tourism in the entire county. They also have a contact us page in which you can request further information, and there's a number of check boxes on things that you can request information about. There's 25 check boxes, and by my count, 14 of the 25 reflect things that are going on outside of the city of Ashland. Casino, bird watching, camping, Chequamegon National Forest, ferry cruises, hiking, sportsman's map, kayaking, motorcycling, mountain bike trails, snowmobile ATV map, waterfalls, cross-country skiing, mural brochures. Those are some of the information that you can request on the Chamber's website, and most of those things are happening outside the city of Ashland.
Anyone else have questions? Bill?
What is the sales tax on rooms? And does the rest of the county, do they have to pay a sales tax that goes for rooms also to the county?
That's a really good question. So the sales tax, the room tax in the city of Ashland, it's a municipality-driven state tax. So each municipality has a room tax if they choose to do so. So that is, it's 6.5%. And then the county gets 0.5% throughout the whole county. There is no other room tax except for Madeline Island. They charge a room tax. And out of the city of Ashland, because I talked to Barb, our treasurer, in the city, and in 2020, the amount of sales tax just on hotel rooms in Ashland given back to the county was $23,000 and change. And that's not including Madeline Island and Butternut, Glidden, all of the other ones, and Odana. That doesn't include any of the other communities. That was just Ashland. So that's a big return for the county.
Dick came in all, and I was like, I kind of whistled at him and I said, man, you clean up nice. He goes,
Okay.
Could everyone please online, please mute yourself? We can hear you here.
This is Supervisor Franek. Can I make comments?
Yes.
Go ahead, Laura.
Elizabeth.
Oh, Liz, are you on?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to, Mary, I thank you for everything that you do for Ashland and the whole county as a whole. Being a retail clerk and a restaurant worker, we tell people, about the murals and about the whole area. And a lot of people, they didn't even come up this weekend just to go to the Apple Fest or just to go to the stock car races. They came here because it's a beautiful area right on the lake. They were doing the circle tour around the lakes. There was people that were coming from fishing and hiking all over the area. So thank you for promoting the whole county. And I've been recommending so many tourists this summer to the tunnels. So thank you for that too. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Yeah. Go ahead, Laura. You're up.
Thanks, Dick. Mary, what is your budget? How much is your budget overall?
Our budget fluctuates. We are the fiscal agent for everything that we do in terms of event driven. So sometimes it's 600,000, sometimes it's 500,000. It's pretty much the same as the Bayfield Chamber budget. We do
Just a
probably
sec.
12 events that we don't really make hardly any money on. We just fiscal agent, so it runs in and out.
If you didn't have that $25,000, how would your operations change?
Well, that's where I'd like to clarify this. That's where I think that some of you are really talking about the city. The chamber promotes the city. We get the room tax, we promote the city, but we also administer the county tourism budget. So the county money is strictly for county. It's not for city. We spend the county money on county tourism and more than that, actually. And so this is about, like I said earlier, the smaller communities, because they're the ones that are really gaining the return because they have a visitor guide, they have pages in the visitor guide, they're able to be promoted. So it's about them.
Okay, I understand that, but if you only got $10,000 from us for this year, how would your plans change?
Well, I guess my question to you folks is, if you're giving $10,000 to run a tourism department, what would your expectation be for $10,000?
Okay, did you receive any of the American Rescue Plan money?
No.
There is an American Rescue Plan travel allotment that can be applied for also.
I can't apply for that though. I am not eligible for that.
Okay, do we have to apply for it?
I don't think so. There's some that the only tourism one I know of is more for larger destinations, people that are promoting conference and conference space, people like Madison, Milwaukee, Stevens Point, some of those people. You see, those bigger areas, well, let me back up the truck. The state overall took a negative 26% or a 26% decrease in economic impact last year. We had -2. And that's because we were really fortunate that people came to all of our areas in Ashland County. So you have to show a pretty significant loss in order to get money out of that fund. And we didn't show a significant loss because people traveled here. We shuttered February 17th and people started traveling February 19th. I swear. It was a good year for everybody actually in this area.
Okay.
Any more questions for Mary?
All right, and Whistle
Pat.
Stop is this weekend. We need volunteers. Oh, sorry. You want to volunteer?
Early in your presentation with the room tax, you said the county gets a portion. I don't believe that's accurate. I believe the chamber gets 70% under state law and the city of Ashland is getting the other 30%. We had a gorgeous weekend, fall leaves. When people come here that I know that go to Copper Falls from outside of the area, they don't stay in Mellon, they stay in the city of Ashland. And the same is true for a lot of other things in the county. What the county does in many ways is provide more marketing opportunities for you. So you can go to Butternut, you can go to Glidden, you can go to Mellon, you can go down to Clam Lake, et cetera. But all of those things draw people in, but the place they stay, with few exceptions, is the city of Ashland, and you get 70% of that room tax. It's over 300,000 this year. The room tax was raised from 6.2% to 6.5%. And this summer, some of the people I knew coming up here couldn't get a room. I checked at America Inn in late July. A single room was $239.99. Room tax was $15.20. That meant you were getting a $10 bill. The city was getting a $5 bill, basically, just on a single room. And so you've got that revenue coming in. The Ashland Area Development Corporation has one full-time employee and a part-time employee. The chamber, you said, when fully staffed, is at 3.5. And so, yes, you are promoting the rest of the county, But by being able to do that, you bring additional money back in to the chamber because the people are staying here. They're not staying Mellon Glidden, for the most part. And then I also want to comment, I think we've got to focus on economic development more. And I'm going to speak to that when we get to the budget. When we look at the census, Ashland County population declined, Bayfield County population increased. We can look at the increase in sales tax here. Many of you know I grew up outside of Mason and Bayfield County. And for many of the people that live west of here, where have we done our shopping all these years? We do it in Ashland. Most of the money I spend retail is in Ashland, and that includes things out on the land I own in Mason. So as Bayfield County gains population, Ashland County is benefiting by that increase in sales tax. And I'll make one more comment, and this is just from a math perspective. We don't know what the correlation is between your activity and what happens in the county as far as sales tax. Presumably there is some related to the chamber. But with the internet these days, people can find lots of things. More things can be shifted online in terms of resources that people access, et cetera. And certainly people, know that we're here. So we don't have a study showing where this, the impact of this money. We don't have that. And it's also not lost on me that you didn't present the board or the finance committee with the records of where you have spent this money during this process. When I looked at it, what I found online from the state site, a lot of it was spent, what you reported, because it's Ashland related activity in the city of Ashland or something close to that. So we really don't know where that money is going. But in terms of economic development, we need more good paying jobs. We need more people here. We need more businesses here. And we have to look at the big picture to try to have more of that here, which would indirectly benefit the chamber if we could do more on the economic development front. I do want to say the chamber does a really good job with the resources you have. You've been very successful. There's lots of good things happening. You've got lots of events and those pull in other money, and that's all good. It just, as a county, you know what our budgets look like. You heard the employees this morning, and you know that on the economic development front, that's a tough nut to crack, but we don't put as much into that as I think we should and need to if we're going to reverse some long-term trends here with population, business, and economic development. That's really the trying to balance things to get to there. But you do a really good job with what you do. I certainly have to say that.
Thank you. And I'd like to respond to a couple of that. So when I was saying that we had room tax, I was saying that the county gets a portion of the sales tax on the room tax. I mean, every time we get a head in a bed, you get a portion of it. That's what I so totally meant. And then I would like to say that it's very competitive out there. Everybody has a waterfall. In fact, the state of Wisconsin Department of Tourism just did a new commercial. I thought at first it was Morgan Falls. It's not. It was Interstate Falls. And there was zip lining and all these things. It's very competitive. So if somebody goes to Copper Falls, they don't always stay in Ashland. They're drawn to Park Falls, Phillips, Price County, Iron County, all over the place. We have to work really hard to grab that head in a bed here. But what I'm trying to tell you is that tourism has been something in the last 10 to 15 years that has always given you a return on investment. And I think what gave me such a heartache and a gut ache yesterday when Dan told me about the finance and exec committee pulling money was the fact that we've been successful with tourism and bringing fresh money in and bringing dollars back into the county. Why would we get punished for that? And it's not really the city. You got to leave the city out of it. It's the county communities that count. It's the smaller communities that we're trying to promote. And economic development, tourism is the freshest type of economic development there is. It's quick, it's fast. You do an ad, they come, they spend money. It's not our money from our city. It's really great. So I guess I just had to respond to that. I see a hand over here somewhere.
I had one more over here.
Oh,
Matt?
Yeah, I'd like to also comment about the economic development of tourism. It leads to economic development. And, I've spent almost 30 years here working in tourism, if you will, within this county. And, I could tell you that it gets people here. And once they're here, they like what they see. and they try to figure out, how can I now live where I vacation? And they actually come here, and now with the internet, they're actually able to do business out of here and not back in Minneapolis. And we're seeing places go for sale in other parts of the county here that are directly related to tourism. I want to tell you that, you know, the elk in the Clam Lake area is something that they advertise. And if you go down to Clam Lake on a weekend, you better have gas, because that gas station actually sells out of gas. And it used to only happen during the winter when snowmobiling was going on, and it was the premium gas only. But now, I mean, you're talking about bare shelves on some of these places. And if you take that away from them, they may not be there. And, you know, the point about the motels and stuff is correct. I know there's a lot of them that go to Ironwood and Hurley, and we need to capture more of that. I think if we had more motel space within this county, we'd have an opportunity to fill it because of tourism. The bicycles and motorcycles, and Mary and her crew have developed pamphlets for that. And I can tell you that countless times I've come across people in the middle of nowhere with one of those pamphlets in their hand. They're looking because that's how they found out about it. You know, I think if anything, instead of cutting their money, we should be increasing it. But then we should also be asking the Forest Service why they haven't opened their campgrounds. We've lost a lot of revenue that way as well. And some of these communities, you know, you talk about a bag of marshmallows, some firewood or whatever, but that makes a difference. If we could get those campsites back open, we could get people in, and that's more money for this county. So instead of looking at cutting tourism, we ought to be trying to figure out ways that we can help increase this, and let's put that money back into that account.
Thanks, Matt. Kathy?
Mary, first, thank you for doing the tourism and doing a great job for Ashland County. One thing I'd like people to know is when Mary does a glossy color pamphlet, it's distributed here, but where it's really distributed is down in the cities, La Crosse, Minnesota, Minneapolis. It's going down there. That's where all this tourism is coming up here from. So I hope they restore your money. I really do, Mary.
Blah, 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 blah. Just kidding. The other thing I wanted to comment was, Pat, you made a comment, and I've heard it twice now from you, about these low-paying jobs in tourism. We just heard Terry Barningham say that she's competing with McDonald's. Oh, wait a minute. Was it Kim? I think it was Kim. She's competing with McDonald's. The market is bearing right now, which just simply means that in order to get employees, these tourism jobs are paying decent amount of money. You can go to McDonald's and you can make $15 an hour. And my husband just got a job at $15 an hour, and it's not at McDonald's. So, you know, I get tired of hearing that these tourism jobs don't pay any money, and you have to have entry-level jobs. North Lakes Clinic just said we're competing with Arby's in a meeting that we just had on a tourism advisory committee. So everybody is competing for employees. It's just all over the board, and you guys are seeing it as well. The ARPA funds, I know we haven't really talked about that, but I know that the previous administrator had said they had 3 years of ARPA funds that could fund tourism easily, and that it would be eligible for that. And I really just, I hope that you folks will see the return on investment. I will do a better job of presenting things and having some of the other county tourism people come, and we'll just, you know, fa la 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 la, because we are happy people. We are just happy. And I feel bad for all the folks that are, you know, with the merit increases. I truly feel bad about that. And then I come in here and go, wow, everything's great. So, but tourism is good, and it's good for your mental health. So make sure you're taking vacation time.
Clarence?
Supervisor Kinney just a moment ago said we haven't seen any real information on how that $35,000 is being spent. And the proposal is to divert $25,000 of that to Ashland Area Development Corporation. I would counter that by saying, how do they propose to spend that money?
Are there any more comments? Any more comments for Mary? Thank you, Mary, for your presentation.
Thank you very much. And again, Whistle Stop is this weekend. We need volunteers Just got to throw that in. Shameless plug.
All right, we'll go to D3, employee handbook changes from the executive committee.
Okay, this is the change that the executive committee made back in August before I got here. We're bringing it up to the full county board for approval. And all it does is change the sick leave and work and remote work policy.
May I be recognized? Hey, how's it going, everyone? So this is Supervisor Quebec, and I'm in favor of the changes. The one thing that I do want to make note of is the fact that one change that I would also be in favor of is to allow new employees to access their annual time, their paid time off, because it takes a whole year for somebody to be able to access their vacation time when working at the county. We're having a really hard time recruiting and retaining employees, and this would be an easy change to make in order to make it just more palatable to come on to the county. A lot of employers have kind of a probationary period where they don't allow folks to take their annual time, but it's usually limited to 60 to 90 days. So, I think that's another change that we should look at. We recently hired an office worker for extension who's a younger person. She would, when you're young, it's you don't want to spend your entire time working, and we need to hire younger people and make things easier for people to come to work. So I'm in favor of, I really like the remote and flex time policy. I think that's another kind of non-compensation benefit that we can provide to a lot of employees just to make it easier. I was recently hired at a new job, and I appreciate having the ability to do remote work because I have to go to the county board meeting, so I was able to work at home during this weekend to kind of build up my bank and be able to do things like this. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this policy. Thank you.
Go ahead, Pat.
On the bottom of page 8, this is just a question of clarification of language and maybe some tweaks here. The de facto resignation, it says staff who fail to report for 3 consecutive days/shifts. And so it's got days/shifts there, comma, fail to communicate with their supervisor for the same 3 consecutive days, but there's not a /shift there. And what I'm thinking about is clarification, because what if something happens and then people are starting to debate the language or intent here? So if we're going to use days/shift in one place, why wouldn't we use in the second place the 3 consecutive days/shift? And then the third comment is failure to respond to their supervisor's communication. And just for clarification, does the county have an official form of communication? For example, is it email? So that if a supervisor emails someone, then there's a record of it, and that's the official form of communication that the employee is responsible for checking, as opposed to maybe the supervisor called the employee on their personal phone, but then there's no record and et cetera. So make sure that we got a document to back this up in case there are issues.
Okay, the reason why it says shift is because there are some employees who work different days. So if you were, the jail is a good example, or the highway department in the winter, say they start working at 9 o'clock and their shift doesn't end until early morning. Well, that's two separate days. So that's why you have days and shift in there. As far as official communication, each department handles it differently. I will say if there's a cell phone call, there is a record that the call was made. It's in your it's both in your phone and it'll be available on your cell phone bill.
But is there, let me go back to the shift thing. So in the 3 consecutive days, if we take 3 consecutive days, that's a 72-hour period. But if a shift starts one day, and then if we're talking 3 shifts, if let's say they work an 8-hour shift or a 10 or 12, now we're beyond 3
Correct.
days as a whole. That's why I'm wondering if there shouldn't be shift at the end of that too, because it's actually going to capture more than a 72-hour window.
Yeah, and that's probably a good change.
And then on the cell phone, there may be a record of, there was a call made, but does that document what was said and that what the county might want on the county's end
No,
to
it-
address any legal issues? And so that's why I'm wondering if an email account on the county email might give you an official record, and then employees know that they're responsible for checking that because it's the official form of communication.
The problem with email, as some people in this room know, it's not available everywhere in the county. There are some county employees and members of this board who don't have internet access where they live. Heck, you can go up to Highway 13
Okay.
and not get cell phone signal. So I think each department has to be able to do it with whatever mode works best for their employees. Each department, different, you know, if most of the employees live in the city, then yeah, you can certainly do email. and
Okay.
phone. But some people have to depend on landlines. So I don't, it's really, each one's different.
So changing it, the part of the sentence where it just has days to days/shift.
That would be a good change.
Okay, so do you want a motion on that?
If you'd like, yes, please.
So I'll make a motion to change in the sentence that starts at the top of page 9. The very first part of the line, supervisor for the same 3 consecutive days, and then add /shifts.
I'll second this, Pat. But I would suggest a friendly amendment to say that, so the motion to approve these policies plus making that amendment, would you
Yes,
agree to that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll second with the amendment.
What's the amendment?
To approve the policy.
Pat, what did you change?
the very top of page 9, the start of the line there, where it says supervisor for the same 3 consecutive days, to add /shifts, because that shift may run past the 72 hours of 3 days.
So the motion to, it's a motion, right? It's a motion to approve the policies with that amendment.
With that change.
Yeah, with that change to the policy. I just seconded him.
Okay. Point of order, can we vote on the amendment first and then after that vote as amended? So just so it's clear on the record that there was an amendment and then you vote as amended.
Go ahead, Kathy.
One thing I'd like to share with the county board is Dick and I and Dan all went to meetings down in La Crosse last week. And one of the meetings I went to was public information for county boards. They reiterated many times, do not depend on email for notifying your board about things because it is not reliable in many areas. And Dan just said he sent me an email. I didn't get it. So email is not set up right yet to work for the county. When you're down south, it doesn't work. Nervato told me you don't get messages all day long and then there's no message. And then some days I get 300 at a time. So the email is not reliable. It shouldn't be used only as the only way of communication. Thank you.
This is Elizabeth Franick. I have a question.
Go ahead, Liz.
On page 93, for the worker policy, it says remote workers cannot provide daycare supervision for minor children during reportable work hours. Now, does this mean that you cannot be home with your kids and working remotely if you're Ashland County employee? And is there any way that we can amend that to say that, I'm not sure what they're saying, like your children cannot be home with you. Like, what if they're not school age children and you did not have daycare for them that day? They can't be home with you and your Ashland County employee. I just need some clarification and how we can change that to be amenable to people that do not have daycare for their minor children and they still want to work remotely. Thank you.
That's up to you, Mr. Chairman. There's an amendment, so you should vote on the amendment first. If there's no other amendments, then you can vote on the whole thing as amended.
Point of order, but I don't think we have a motion to approve these changes in the first place, so we can't vote on an amendment because there isn't a motion to approve it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't remember a motion to do that. However, you can still amend it before a motion to approve as amended.
Point of clarification, are we doing each one of these pieces one at a time then?
That's up to the county board. You don't have to. You can if you want to.
I
Okay,
interpret it
because it
supervisor.
it just seemed like that first one was just for that one piece, so that's why I,
Yeah, if somebody on the county board wants to amend another section, then yes, you would vote on that other section. If nobody wants to amend anything other than what Mr. Kinney put up, then you would just vote on the changes as amended.
Go ahead, Pat.
I guess to clarify the conversation Supervisor in Quebec and I had a moment ago, when she asked me about that change, I interpreted her comments to indicate that I was making a motion and she was going to support it with that suggested change. So for clarification, then I'll make a motion to approve this with the suggested change to change 3 consecutive days to 3 consecutive days / shifts. So I'll put that motion with that change forward, and Supervisor Quebec seconds that.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to change de facto resignation wordage. Supervisor for same 3 consecutive days / shifts will be the change. Motion to approve with those changes to the resignation process. We have a motion and a second on the table.
If I may, I think we're still in, excuse me, Supervisor Franek had some questions related to the remote work policy. And my understanding was that the county administrator was in the process of answering that question. So if we could just hold off on voting until we're through with that discussion point.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Okay, so as far as voting right now, you can vote on the amendment that Mr. Kinney proposed. However, you wouldn't be voting on the whole policy yet. So you can do this 2 ways. You can vote on the amendment now, or you can just do everything at once at the end. So it's up to you, Mr. Chairman. In either case, the remote work policy would still be up for debate.
So could you please address Supervisor Franek's question related to having your kids at home while you're working at home, whether that would be a violation of the policy?
My reading of the language is yes, it would.
Okay, I mean, I agree with Supervisor Franek that that's problematic. Because I mean, you can have a high school kid who isn't going to require doesn't want any level of supervision and really doesn't need any level of supervision, but they're in the home. And I don't think that should be a violation of the policy. And certainly, you know, there's ways that you can indicate on your timesheet. I had to set my 8-year-old kid up with a snack, you know, so that I took a break from work, and then, you know, they have a snack, they're in front of the TV. I'm not, you know, like, you're not doing any active supervision, you're continuing to work. I mean, that's what we do as parents. You know, we're not, like, just because your kid is there, you're not watching them every single second. And so I really feel like in order for this policy to work, there has to be a more nuanced version of that particular provision in the policy.
Thank you, Phoebe. I totally agree with that. You know, there's single moms, there's single dads, there's people that are grandparents that have they might have to take care of the kids and they still work for the county. I've heard with so many people that there's a lack of daycare providers, and you know, so we have to be more amenable to our employees. You know, we have to find some kind of way that we can accommodate people that work from home that have children. And if there's a way that they can clock in or clock out, if they had to spend more than a half hour or an hour with their children. Thank you.
Go ahead, Laura.
I agree with the previous two supervisors on that. Also, when it comes down to it, if there is no daycare for someone's child and they are our employee, are we going to just start firing people? I think this needs to be done on a case-by-case basis with the input of that person's supervisor, because we could, with the lack of daycare and the lack of workers for daycare that we have currently in our county, we could have a whole bunch of people that don't have daycare for their kids, and we can't afford to start letting people go because they don't have daycare for our kids.
Go ahead, Pat.
I'm wondering if we could interpret reportable work hours in such a way that if a person did need to take, say, a 15-minute break to work with a minor child, that they're clocking out as someone had suggested. If we define reportable work hours, let's say someone's supposed to work 8 hours in a particular day, that they've got the flexibility to structure the 8 hours that they are at work in such a way that works for them around the daycare. So that 8-hour day may string out longer than if they were at their county site for work, but they still get their work done. And so the issue then isn't whether they, spent time with a minor child. The issue is, did they put in the hours they were supposed to do and get the work done that they were supposed to do on that given day in a way that met the county's needs?
Well, we're getting behind a little bit here. I think we should vote on this amendment to the de facto resignation.
If I could make a suggestion.
Good.
So my suggestion would be just removing the word supervision for minor children. So providing daycare for minor children obviously wouldn't be allowed during reportable work hours. And so I would just suggest that in addition to making the change to add the shift to that previous section, that we would just remove supervision from this section and then vote on the policy as a whole. So this would be requesting an amendment to Pat's original motion.
Go ahead, Matt.
So if the chair is going to let the motions pile up here till the end, which is fine, I guess I want to ask the administrator this. singled out was providing daycare for a minor children. There could be lots of things that people do during a workday. They might take their car to the garage to drop it off for repair work, and that might work if you're working flexibly, and then you just put more hours in later in the day to get your work done. It seems to me that if we look 2 paragraphs up from the one related to daycare, it says it is the responsibility of the employee's direct supervisor to ensure that the quality services continue to be delivered at an equal or improved rate of level of timeliness and efficiency. This may include daily logging of work and deliverables. When I look at that paragraph, to me, it says at least, as if I were the employee, that I need to get my job done. It needs to be timely, and the quality of work needs to be as good or better than if I were at my county site. That paragraph to me seems to cover all of the cases of things that may come up in life where an employee may say, you know what, I need to clock out at this time for this long to deal with whatever, but I'm still going to get my job done, and it's going to meet the expectations or exceed what the county has set. I think we could remove the paragraph or that line related to daycare, and still the county would have the authority to make sure the quality is there.
Thanks, Matt.
I think that you're correct. I think the expectation is that employees who are working remotely would have to work a full day, 8 hours, or 7 hours, depending on what their shift is normally. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if we should care whether or not they're clocking in at 5 o'clock and working till 8 o'clock and taking care of their children and clocking back in at noon to 5. I mean, I'm not sure we should really care as long as the work is getting done. So I think if you want it, I agree with you, that paragraph would cover most of everything that you need. And that you could remove the daycare supervision line completely.
Pat, with your new recommendation, I don't see where that is on here.
Well, so the paragraph that's highlighted, if I understood the administrator right, he thinks, and I would agree that that paragraph covers the county being able to ensure the employee puts in the day that they need to at the same or higher level than they were on site. And I want to say that as an employee at WITC, maybe a third to half of my load, depending on the semester, was online. And I would tend to work at home as much as I could because I had a better office and I had more quiet. And so I have experienced this literally for more than 20 years as I did work, and it works just fine. You know what the expectations are your employer does and those that you serve. And so to me, that paragraph covers it. So my offer for an amendment would be that we remove 2 lines down, the sentence that says providing daycare supervision for minor children during reportable hours is not allowed. My motion or amendment would be to remove that from the document.
I believe Supervisor Quebec has an amendment, so it might be easy if we just ask her to.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
Okay,
Mackenzie.
so I mean, I think the way that we could do this, the way that we could do this efficiently is that Pat has an original motion on the floor, and he had a motion to approve the policies and make the amendment, adding the word shift to that, you know, to that phrase. And then, you know, he's made a friendly amend, or he's wanted to amend that motion to also include this other change in the remote work policy. I'm fine with that in terms of seconding that. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right, is everybody thoroughly confused yet? All right, we have another amendment on the table to remove providing daycare supervision for minor children during reportable work hours is not allowed. We have a motion and a second on the table to approve that amendment also. So we're going to vote on both amendments.
Yeah, I would suggest as far as so the minutes are accurate, that you vote on the first amendment, then you vote on the second amendment, and then you vote on the policy as amended. So it'd be 3 votes.
So the first amendment we are voting on is to add shifts on page 9 after 3 consecutive days shifts, correct?
All right, we'll vote on the First Amendment. Any more discussion?
And
I'll-
that was a mo. oh,
That was a motion by Kenny, second by Cadet.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll vote on the Second Amendment to remove providing daycare supervision.
I'll make a motion that we do that.
We've already done that. We're just voting.
We have a motion and a second on the table to remove that section. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Now the policy as amended.
Pardon?
Now the policy as amended. The changes as amended.
Okay.
It makes it clear in the minutes.
Now we need a motion to vote on policy as amended. We have a
This is Laura
motion.
Negro. I'll make that motion.
Motion by Laura. Second by Bill. No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. No, we didn't address this yet.
ARPA. No, we did that. That's one that they just voted on, number 3. Now we're at 4.
I don't think I have that on my paperwork, but, okay, we're gonna go on to the number 4 ARPA funds update. I have nothing on that.
All right, so we spent roughly 94,000 as of now. There's another 15,000 that we have for a bill we have coming in for the metal detectors. So that'll be added to this. And then later on, we're voting on some big parts. We're voting to defederalize 360,000. So that'll bring us to 450. And then another 100,000 approximately for hazard pay for employees. So that would bring us up to, what was it, 550 of the 3 million. But as of right now, you stand at roughly $110,000 committed completely. So I just want, again, the 360 that we're going to defederalize later is going to be added to this total. So that brings you up to 460. And then the $100,000 that's going to be voted on later for hazard pay for employees is going to be another 100,000 out of it. So that brings you up to close to 600,000.
Richard. The TVs and the sound system is not included in that figure that we spent so far, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was about $75,000.
I think so, yeah. So, yeah. So actually you're looking at, and thank you. So you're looking at adding 85,000 to the 95. So like, yes, sir. Right, so we still have 50,000. All right, so we still have 50,000. So that brings you up to 145, plus 15 for the metal detector. So that gets you to 160 is committed.
In looking at the sheet here, I'm taking a look at Heartland Business Systems LLC. That comes up to, there's a 21,000, there's 92 or $97. there's $1,546, another $105,
Mhm.
there's $8,700. So there's a total of $7,300 or $73,841 in this budget for the system. But we
21,
keep saying that it's not in this budget, when in fact it is.
well, 21,
So I come up with $21,396.49 of other little line items, like over at the church or transport, COVID, or other little things, webcams. I think the webcams belongs to this, and I didn't add that either into this Heartland communication, because I didn't know how to determine what was theirs, like that camera up there, there's a camera back here, and stuff like that. So however Heartland Communication is billing us for this, they're piecemealing
yes.
each and every little thing that they're buying as part of this contract.
Right, they're paying, they're charging us as they go.
Okay.
So when they bought
But,
when the
I mean,
TVs were
it's
purchased, they billed us.
It's
When
when
the
you're talking about-
sound system was purchased, they billed us. We'll be getting another one soon for the installation.
So then in fact, Heartland Communication is beyond the $73,841 because some of these other things like the AV equipment or the cables and or just the mounting brackets, the wireless headsets. And I didn't add those in, and they got that from Amazon. And two webcams came from Amazon. I did not add those, another $130.
That is subtractive. So the 75,000 is total budget. And as they-
Dan, your mic's off.
as they purchase things, then they bill it. So we're not getting billed the whole 75 at once, we're getting billed as they use it.
I guess my point is, the items that I could identify, they're already up to $73,841 in this ledger sheet. Or more.
I just want to make a point of clarification. Supervisor Berlin has said numerous times Heartland Communications. It's Heartland Business Systems. Heartland Communications is the owner of the radio stations here in town. They're two separate entities.
So do we have to pass something? No, it's informational.
Did something go wrong with the speakers again? Because I'm having a hard time hearing people.
Oh, no, this is information. Supervisor Berlin asked if we had to pass something. I said, no, it's information only.
Thank you.
People, supervisor wanted to see it at every meeting. That's all.
And anything else on the update?
No, we're going to be adding to the total in the next couple items.
Any more questions? Moving right along to number 5, approve/disapprove defederalizing HHS money.
All right, so this is $360,000 for healthcare commitments that we're allowed to reimburse ourselves as eligible expenses from the ARPA funds. We spend about at least $1.2 million a year on healthcare commitments. And so we're going to use the ARPA funds, put it back into the county treasury. And then later on, we're going to be using this money to balance the budget next year.
Go ahead, Mike.
I make a motion to approve defederalizing $359,047.14.
Matt?
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to defederalize the HHS money. Any more questions? Bill?
Has the finance committee looked at this?
Yes, it went through the finance committee and the finance/exec committee.
Any more questions? We have a motion to approve, right? And a second. All's in favor of approving and defederalizing HHS many? Say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries.
At the
I'm sorry, I
executive,
didn't have this on.
at the executive/finance committee, they held a joint meeting last Friday. The recommendation that came out of that committee is to use $100,000 of the ARPA funds to give every full-time employee a $500 hazard pay, premium pay, and every part-time employee who's eligible for WRS a $250 premium pay. The issue came up about remote workers. We're still looking into that. I know of 6 right now, 5 in HHS, 1 in IT. While they're not eligible for ARPA money because they're not here, the intent of the joint committee was to pay all employees, including the remote ones. So what we'd be doing is using defederalized ARPA money to pay the remote workers. And everything else would be ARPA eligible. And the total cost is around $100,000. Also, and we need to point out that the sheriff's deputies are already getting $1,200 from their new contract, both this year and next year. So the intent of the board has to be, do they want to give the deputies another $500 or are they excluded because they're already getting $1,200 in ARPA funds this year and next year as hazard pay?
Wait, Bill.
Would the elected officials in the county be getting this $500 also?
That would be up for this county board to decide, but my feeling is no, they wouldn't, and I don't believe they're eligible. So no, the sheriff would not, the county clerk would not, the treasurer would not.
So I was listening to the lieutenant from the jail and Mel, who came from the jail today. And I agree that these individuals, number one, they're not eligible for that $1,200 bonus, correct?
The jailers are not eligible for the $1,200.
Yes. And the jail staff has been, all the jail staff have been and continue to be under a special and significant threat related to infection from COVID. You know, we also know that there continues to be issues related to recruiting and retaining jail staff. So I did some calculations just off the fly. If we have the same number or even an increased number of jail staff, I would propose looking at budgeting $100,000 for bonuses that are linked to the amount of time that the jail staff have been working under these conditions up to the date that ARPA funds need to be expended, which is December of 2024. And if there was an additional $56, is it a 2-week pay period?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so if there is an additional $55 that was paid out, you could do it from the time that the public health emergency started as of March 2020. We're talking about an additional $56 per jail staff member. So you could do a bonus that goes back in time and then a bonus that goes forward in time as long as they continue to work for the staff. That pretty much equals the $5,000 that Mel was advocating for in terms of a bonus for jail staff. And I think that is really, I think it's doable. And I think it's, you know, I think it's, you know, if we took the bonuses out of the sheriff's department staff in terms of the deputies and the law enforcement officers, you know, we could do some balancing out. And considering the fact that these are really, these folks for the most part are at the lower end of the pay scale, and they're doing the work that puts them at the highest risk level for infection. And because we have issues related to recruitment and retention of people, and we don't have enough jail staff, that this would be justified.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm on the executive committee and we discussed this with the finance and executive. And my suggestion was to raise all Ashland County employees to a minimum of $15 per hour. Some of them are getting, I don't know if this should be brought up now or at a later time.
Actually, during the budget,
Pardon me?
during the budget item, line item.
Okay, but we did approve this recommendation here. I don't know anything about the essential workers getting $12.50, but we approved the $500.
Sheriff's deputies have a separate contract. They're still allowed to unionize and have a union. And as part of the contract that was just recently approved by the county board, they get $1,200 this year in ARPA funds and $1,200 next year in ARPA funds as a bonus. So when you decide to approve this, you have to consider, are you including sheriff's deputies in the additional $500? So they get $1,700 or not. That's the only point I was making.
Right, Matt.
So I want to ask Supervisor Quebec. So is my understanding that what you're suggesting is rather than giving $500 to the deputies who are getting these other funds because of their contract, shifting that to the people that work in the jail instead?
Sure.
That to me seems like a reasonable thing to do. And I know this is, you know, off the, you know, I didn't know about the $1,200 here until just now. But that seems like a reasonable thing to do, given the difference in pay to start with, the difference in risk to start with. And I think there's no question that we have a morale issue with jail staff. So I would certainly support making that shift, and instead of the deputies putting that into a pool for jail staff. So if you want to make a motion, Supervisor Quebec, I'll second it.
I'll make that motion. So the motion would be to, the motion would be to, any, you know, this, are we starting from the point that we're approving this, you know, the executive committee's recommendation? I would say, you know, yes, with a change that would allocate any funds going to contracted sheriff's deputy employees, like shifting that funding to increase the bonuses for the jail staff. Is that way too complicated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so I understand. So you're saying,
If somebody can do this more artfully,
okay.
be my guest.
So what you're saying is the sheriff's deputies bonus is that, or let's say hazard pay, because we don't want to say bonus because it's not that.
Hazard pay.
Or premium pay. The sheriff's deputies stay at $1,200 because that's what they're contractually obligated for. We can't say no to that. We've already signed that contract. But they would not get the additional $500 we're talking here. So instead of giving each deputy $500, you would give that to the jail, to the correctional officers. Okay, just as a point of record, that would be,
And this would be in addition to that $500 bonus
Right.
that would be, that all county employees would be eligible for.
right. So correctional officers would essentially get about $1,000.
I mean, I think we need to do the math to figure out.
It's somewhere, I mean, there's about as many deputies as there are correctional officers. So it's around $1,000.
I'll second that motion. This is Pat. And just as an observation, we're not changing the total here. That's still 100,000. We're just shifting the pool of money that would have otherwise gone to the deputies to be divided equally to the jail staff.
Got a question, Philomena. How many people are we talking about, jail staff?
So Kim just told me they have 17 staff members right now.
17.
Yes.
I believe we have about 11 or 12 deputies. And that, the question I would ask is, do we have part-time deputies that are in this under the part-time that wouldn't be covered under the contract?
I don't know the answer to that question. We have one. So my suggestion would be to set a dollar amount for the jail staff and say the sheriff's deputies don't get the extra $500.
So the amount that I came at was $56 a pay period, retroactive and moving forward. Yeah. And I mean, and that's more than, I think that's more than we budgeted for in terms of the overall $100,000, but I think it's fair.
Yes, Gary.
Just a question. All of this money is in a grant or in a $500 or $1,000. It's not base building. There's going to be no base building in any of this, correct?
Correct. There'll be no base building. I just did some quick math here. 17 times $5,000 is $85,000. So instead of using $100,000 of ARPA funds for this hazard pay, premium pay, you'd be using about close to $185,000.
And the reason that the reason that I'm saying it should be retroactive and moving forward is for the jail in particular, there continues to be an ongoing threat related to COVID-19. And we want to get more employees. So if we just say it's this one-time payment, that's not doing anything to help us recruit. So, this would be, this is a little bit, this is a specific proposal for the jail, considering the, the circumstances that we have that are ongoing.
This is Pat. I think we have a misunderstanding of the motion and what I was seconding. What I supported in terms of a second is if we have, say, 12 deputies that are under contract, if 12 is the accurate number, we would take the 12 times 500 and shift that money to the pool of the jail staff and have that money divided among the jail staff. So we're talking, 12 times 500, we're talking $6,000 being shifted from one group to the next, but I wasn't talking about 5,000 per employee in jail staff.
Can we do this and then take this other issue about the jail staff back to finance committee for consideration for, future, for ways to leverage this ARPA funding to address the ongoing issues that the jail staff experience and the recruitment. So instead of going forward with this, just using your motion to shift the funds away from the deputies into the jail, but to continue this conversation related to how are we gonna support jail staff. So that would, instead of talking about, this bonus that would continue forward, we're just your motion, my motion, and the motion that you seconded was simply to shift that fund from the deputies to the jail staff and go with this $500 per staff member with that slight change.
So my understanding is jail staff would get the 500 plus the pool of money that would have otherwise gone to the unionized deputies. That money that would have gone to unionized deputies would be divided equitably, evenly. And I say those words equitably, evenly, because maybe some staff put in more hours than others. You'd have to decide if you're going to prorate it based on hours worked or just number of employees. But that, roughly $6,000 or so just goes to jail staff instead of deputies who are getting this other $1,200 a couple times. But then as far as continuing that conversation, the wage study is one possibility for that, but then also just coming back to finance and exec to review that.
Go ahead, Laura, you're up.
I was just gonna ask for clarification because we have the next agenda item is the pay request above the 2%, but Philomena already like separated it, so I'm good.
Yeah, I'd like to speak in support of the premium pay for everyone. I'm all right with the deputies, their negotiated amount, and them not being included with this. I'm all right with the jailers dividing the booty up from that, if you will. I think that the issue of our jailers and retaining jail staff needs to be referred back to the executive committee so that we don't bog down on this. And I think executive committee needs to come up with a way to figure out how to do some of what's been asked for here. And I'll also include in there, there's a provision that's called protected status, and it affects how they retire and how they're paid. Our jailers do not get that. Our deputies do. And I think that should be included in this as well, is to look for protective status for our jailers. Probation officers for the state are in protective status. And when they go to the jail and they're afraid of somebody that's in the jail, they ask for the jailers to stand there with them who are not in protective status. And that's going to cost us some money, but we need to figure out how to change some of this. And it also goes to keeping well-qualified, great jailers in our jail and not losing them to other counties that can pay more and can provide the protective. So with that said, I hope we can pass this premium for each one of our employees and be on with this.
I guess we were going to discuss about raising the minimum pay for jailers and the rest of the employees to $15 an hour. And so that would cover what you're asking for. I do think they're underpaid, but the way that the executive committee had passed it was that we would give all the employees a $500 raise. And if you feel that the jailers should get $1,000 premium pay, I would go along with that. If that's the intention. The sheriff's deputies will be getting $1,200 as far as I know. Is that correct? $1,250? Twice?
The deputies will be getting it this year and next year.
Okay,
As part of
but
their contract.
for this year, they would be getting $1,250?
1,200.
$1,200.
They're just getting it paid twice as part of their contract.
Okay, so I guess if we wanted to bump the jailers up to $1,000, I don't have a problem with that. As long as the money's coming out of ARPA. So I guess if that is the case, I would make a motion. Oh, is there a motion on the floor? Oh, sorry.
So the motion, and given the numbers, we've got about 12 deputies who are going to get the 1,200. We got roughly 17, 18 jail staff. So the motion is to take the 500 that would otherwise go to the unionized deputies. So if there's 12 of them, 12 times 500 is $6,000. We take the 6,000, divide it up among the jail staff, and that's going to come to 300 and some bucks per jail staff person. So the deputies would not get anything because they're getting $1,200 twice. And the jail staff would get, I think, around $800 some dollars in pay. Supervisor Quebec made the motion. I seconded it.
Everybody understand that? Yes.
Dick, if you're saying something, your mic's off again. I can only barely hear anything.
Turn your mic on.
What the hell? Okay, everybody understand the motion? All those in favor of approving it, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Merit pay raises for employees above 2%.
Again, at the meeting last Friday, the executive/finance committee approved only raising one person's wage, and that's for Mary Jo Gringus, and her position is fully funded by the state. So any pay raise would be reimbursed by the state. There were no other raises approved by the joint committee.
Pat?
At the, I think it was the September 21st finance meeting, the administrator went through the finance committee through this list and gave us comments and recommendations on those. And if I could ask whoever's got the screen here, if we could go to the top of page 11 on the document with the merit raises. So in the September 21st meeting, my understanding of the administrator's comments, I'm going to ask him to explain this to us again, was that he would support this request for the reasons given. Last Friday, we had an executive finance meeting together. I was waiting for someone else to bring this one forward. I should have spoke up then. I didn't. And so I'm speaking up now on this one. But my understanding is the administrator supports this one. Would you speak to that, please?
Yeah, this is to give the clerk of courts an additional $5,000 a year while, and I want to capitalize this, while she is appointed by the judge as register and probate. And the $5,000 will be only for the register and probate position. Legally, we're not allowed to give her a raise as clerk of court until 23, when her term is up. In fact, there will be a resolution at the next board meeting raising pay for those offices. So this would be the $5,000 only for the register and probate position. If she gives that position up, she doesn't get the $5,000. And this is because, I'll be honest, if the judge appoints somebody else to that position, it's going to cost the county a ton more money. We're going to have to pay a register and probate and a deputy to have for that position. So I think the county is getting a good deal fiscally by doing this instead. Again, this is not for her constitutional office as clerk of courts. This is for only the register and probate position. And I think any motion needs to make that clear.
Go ahead, Laura.
I just want to clarify again, this is a separate paycheck from her clerk of courts and it's issued as, or yeah. The register and probate part is separate. Yeah.
Correct. It's only for the register and probate duties. So she is no longer register and probate. She does not get the $5,000.
Okay.
Wait, Matt.
Yeah, I've got a question. So this is for Ms. Pidle and she is serving as the register of probate?
Correct. The judge appointed her as to that position.
I understand the appointment. I'm just concerned because she is an elected official. And, you know, I get the whole thing, but I'm just worried about setting precedents.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. And that's why I'm saying that any motion to approve it would have to be tied specifically to the appointed position of register and probate. That way, like I said, if she's no longer register and probate, she doesn't get the $5,000. It's a completely separate pay from clerk of courts.
I get it. And my concern is there is a rule that says that as an elected person, your wage, salary, whatever is supposed to be established before you take that position. And that's been done. The next question is by doing this appointment, does she need an outside work permit? But it's not outside work. I'm confused on whether she would even be eligible for this, being an elected official.
It's my understanding that everything you say, almost everything you say is correct. I don't disagree with what you're saying. However, we have a situation where a third branch of government has appointed somebody to do a job that she's currently not getting paid for that position. Somebody has to be paid. I mean, you have to pay somebody for doing a job. Granted, we don't have the choice here because it was made by a judge. Uh, I mean, if you don't want to, you could, and she decides not to do it anymore, you'd have to hire somebody.
You know, I like Ms. Pidle. This has nothing to do with her personally.
It's-
And,
it's
and
not-
personally, I wouldn't mind seeing her do this, but I'm concerned. I wonder if have you had a chance to visit with Corp Counsel on this, whether we can even do that?
Yes, I did. And we can do it as long as it's separated completely. That you make it very clear that it's only register and probate. You're not increasing her wages as clerk of courts, which was set back in 2017.
Okay.
So you'd have to make it specifically for this clerk, this register and probate position.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
Who was register and probate before? Deb Gooch? Okay, she's passed away 3-4 years ago, at least.
Clarence?
Any idea what we were paying for that position before this?
I don't know, we are paying a full-time deputy in that, oops, sorry. We are paying for a full-time deputy in that position though, right now.
Okay.
And she's maybe at, say, just a guesstimate, 40,000, 38 to 40,000.
So if we had to pay a full-time register and probate,
In an answer to Matt's question, it appears that Bayfield County is doing the same thing by that letter.
Just a follow-up question. There's a deputy that's performing these duties. So is her responsibility then supervisory to the deputy that's doing the work, or is she?
Well, yeah, I think the current deputy answers to Sandy. Sandy is still named as the register and probate, and Sharon is named deputy register and probate.
I'm uncomfortable with this, and I guess if I had to vote on it right now, I'd vote no. What I'd suggest is perhaps this could be tabled to our next meeting and have a chance to get an answer to some of this.
if you'd like to send me some very specific questions, I'll be happy to get answers for you.
Well, I guess my concern is now hearing that there's a deputy performing those duties, what the obligation then is of Ms. Pidle in all this.
You have to have a registrar and a deputy. So you have to have two positions.
So is-
And so yes, her position is supervisory.
So is it, what kind of time commitment does this take from her duties as clerk of court?
I'd have to ask her. I couldn't tell you how much time it takes.
May
Nonetheless,
I,
clerk-
may I say something? Just for informational, the last sold register and probate was at $47,000.
And that's plus a deputy.
Correct.
So you're looking at closer to 80. Wow.
The deputy was part-time,
Okay.
right?
I just, point of information, and I don't mean to be smart, but I'm going to be. An elected official doesn't even have to show up to work. Never. So the duties that that person has as their elected job, we expect them to be there and do the job. But in all honesty, they never have to show up if they don't want to. So, and I agree with Matt that there's a couple of questions here. But, you know, you can't really compare an elected official to what they would do as another job because they really don't ever have to show up legally. They could be absent for whatever their term of office is, you know, and there's not much you could do about that. But it would be interesting to hear from her too and say, you know, what part of, you have to set aside your elected duties, which I'm assuming she can do, to do this other job, how much time does that job take? And then if the judge can appoint anybody to it, you know, is that the best fit? I assume the judge knows best, but so. Well, if it's in finance.
Mr. McKenzie, would you like her to come to finance or executive?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
Well, I would think that if this was recommended by the judge, that there's a lot of credibility to it. I don't know why we're questioning it. She had to go beyond her normal duties to perform this, and I think the compensation is in order. Pat?
Well, she did come to a meeting, and I'm trying to remember if she spoke during the public comment period or some other point, but she did speak to this at one point to us. And, you know, she's been doing this, it's going to be coming on 3 years. She's not asking for back pay on this either, and it's only until the next election, correct? And then would this issue have to be revisited if the same person is reelected?
As long as the judge has her, keeps her appointed to that position, she would stay at that position also. And she can run for reelection in 22.
Well, to me, my understanding is, you know, we either take option door A here, which costs us $5,000 a year, and we haven't been paying for it for 3 years, or we risk having door B, which is someone being appointed that's going to cost us a lot more money. And that work needs to be done. And Supervisor Murdoch, you know, you're right about, you know, the elected part, you know, they're elected. But I think, you know, I think most of us know this person. We know her work history and her work ethic. And I think for the $5,000, that's going to be the far more economic output or come for the county versus if we say no to this, you know, at some point before the end of the year, then I think you can expect someone to be appointed. And so we'd have to make sure we can work it in before we approve the budget.
Ernst?
Is the deputy appointed or hired?
Sorry, hired.
You know, am I correct that when we had a full-time person as register and probate, there was not a deputy? Is that correct?
No, there was a part-time deputy.
Oh, part-time. So actually, yeah, okay. So it's kind of a flip-flop where the deputy is full-time now and the register and probate is basically part-time then.
Correct.
What did we pay the deputy then at that point?
It was only, I don't. Oops, I don't want to guess at that. I mean, because she was part judicial assistant. She was part office assistant in the clerk of circuit court's office. And then she had a percentage that was charged to register and probate for part-time deputy time.
I'd like to go on record as making a motion to approve that. We have a second. Seconded by Mike Berlin. What? No, he seconded it.
Oh.
We have two people who did. You didn't get to say anything, Ron.
Dick?
All right, any more discussion?
Go
ahead,
I have
Laura.
I have a question for you. Since you didn't say the motion out loud, would your motion be that the clerk of court shall receive $5,000 a year starting January 1st, 2022 for the register and probate position?
I would say Sandy Pytel will get $5,000 a year for the register and deed as a separate pay from our clerk of court position.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on what the motion actually was.
All right, any more discussion? All right, we're voting on the register and probate bonus. $5,000, is that right? Pardon?
It's wages, not bonus.
Yeah, we can't say bonus. I'll be in trouble. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
I'll abstain, Ms. McKenzie.
Motion carries. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
I'd like to address this letter that we have from the Ashland County Sheriff's Office, the Division of Emergency Management, which is kind of, as I went through the packet this weekend, what Dorothy Tank here is looking for is a 2% on top of the 2%. And in the second paragraph, she alludes to that, nor is she allowed to spend the full amount of that grant. And if we were to give her 2% on top of the 2%, as she alluded here, that's $876 times 2, which is a total 4%, leaving available grant balance of $10,154.50 to be turned back. I don't understand. And where does it come that if she gets a grant, that she's, what do you call it, promulgated to turn back money every year, as indicated in the second paragraph? I don't quite understand that part. Can anyone explain to me? And of course, Dorothy's not available this week, so I did not have a chance to talk to her.
I am on the phone if I can speak.
Oh, here we go. Let's have it.
Go ahead.
What I mean by that is because emergency management is funded through federal dollars through an emergency management performance grant, 50% of salary, fringe, and operating expense is paid for through this grant. So because it is a matching grant, which means 50% is paid for by the county and then 50% is matched by the grant, because all three things, salary, fringe, and operating expense, do not exceed the grant award, I always have money which gets turned back to the state. When I have approached previous county administrators on ways to utilize that money, but because it requires a 50% match, I have always been turned down. And yes, part of that could be a salary increase. And in this case, what I was proposing is that in the 2% be fully provided by the county, and then the match would be fully provided by the grant, which would then equal 4%. And I think many other departments might have a similar grant funding opportunity. That is what I meant by my letter. Does that help?
A little bit, yes. But the thing is, when we apply for this grant, it's a federal grant being administered by the state, who you turn this money back to at the end of the fiscal year. But the thing is, when you apply for this grant, you have a budget. Am I correct?
Correct.
And in that budget, say whether it be $87,000 and 50% of that is matched by the county. The county puts aside in the budget, 50% of that grant is in that budget. Am I correct? So if that money, if that 50% is already in the county budget, why are we so concerned about turning back 10,000 or whatever it may be at the end of the fiscal year. Am I making sense?
I think what I heard you ask is why am I making a point of turning that money back?
Yes.
Okay, because there are ways that the county could benefit from purchases, say, equipment, or possibly funding a part-time person, things like that, that could provide additional assistance at the county level that we could always benefit from, but I've always been turned down. Excuse me, other than 1 year, I'm usually turned down. There was 1 year that we moved forward with that and it worked out very, very well for us.
So when you're saying you're turned down, who's making this decision?
Generally, the county administrator in the past. And I'm assuming that's based primarily on budget numbers.
Well, I need to reiterate and go back to the original budget when you applied for this grant. In that budget, you have items itemized in that budget that you're going to spend this money for. And upon that, 50% is matched by the county, right? So therefore, if you have a budget for this money and you're not spending this money on that budget, we have a savings of $10,000+ that we're going to return back to the state or the feds because, well, it's a match through the county and we'd be saving a little bit money because we're, of the 50% match. To me, that does not make any sense because already that 50% match is in the 21 budget. Am I correct? So why are we concerned about turning this $10,000 back and not utilizing it as previously identified in the budget when you applied for this grant? Does that make sense?
As I indicated, maybe we can do this better offline, not to tie up the meeting, but I'm turning $10,000 back. There's a potential of turning $10,000 back this year, where when the county matches that, we're looking at $20,000. There is equipment that we could definitely purchase and benefit from with the utilization of that grant funding versus turning it back to the state where other counties then utilize that funding. That's my point. That is my greatest concern.
I guess at this point, as chairman of the finance committee, I would like to see you at our next meeting. If not before, I would like to sit down with you personally and we can talk this over just a little bit so that I have a more clear understanding. So that
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Do I need to make a motion to table this at this point?
No, there was no motion to begin with. There's no motion to begin with, so no, you don't need to table. However, I will put EMS or emergency management on the finance committee agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorsey.
You're welcome.
Any more discussion? Then we'll go to number 8, approve or disapprove the wage study. Dan?
Okay, this is something that was approved by the last Friday again. It's to spend up to $40,000 for a wage study and create job descriptions.
Just going back to the previous item now, as I understand it, when that was brought up, the finance committee was just recommending that we approve the request by Mary Jo Gingras for a merit pay increase.
Yeah.
And then we also voted to approve the request from Sandy Peitel for that separate position.
Correct.
So all these other requests have not been approved then, is that correct?
Correct. So
Did
it's
we
up to,
vote on approving the recommendations by the finance committee then? I
The
don't know
finance
that we,
committee only approved Mary Gingrich.
right, but I
Mary Jo.
mean, do we have to vote on accepting their request or is that?
No, if you
This
want,
is, it was just informational then?
if you want to bring up an individual department, you're
No,
welcome.
no, I'm just, you know, we kind of went by it.
It's informational, yeah,
Yeah,
unless
it's
somebody
okay,
wants
so
to
it's
vote
just
on it.
informational. Okay.
Unless somebody wants to vote on it, yeah. So I'm sorry, are we on the next item now? Or are we, Mr. Metzinger?
Bill,
I guess I'm kind of confused also. The Executive Finance Committee met jointly
Mhm.
and we approved the recommendation to give Mary Jo
Correct.
Ingris a raise
Yes,
and it's going to be completely funded.
by the state, yes, correct.
Yeah. Does the county board need to vote on that now, the full board, in order to grant this or not? I think we do.
I think when you certainly can. I think, however, when you approve the budget as approved by the finance committee, you're accepting that. So, but if you want to make a separate motion to go ahead and do that, you're certainly welcome to.
I would like to make a separate motion that we approve her request. I think she's deserving of it and she's written us grants and it's 100% reimbursed. That's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
all right, did everybody hear the motion? We have a motion and a second on the table to approve the raise for Mary Jo. Any more discussion? Pat?
She asked for the average of what her peers in the surrounding counties are getting. My sense is, I'm not on the Land and Water Conservation Committee, but my sense is she's better than average. I would suggest that that committee in the coming year take a look at her work compared to her peers. And if there's a recommendation that she should be something a bit above average, that be brought back to the Finance Committee and the board next year at this time.
Well, this would be in line with the wage study. Other counties are paying a lot more for that position. Anyway, any more discussion? We have a motion and a second on the table to approve that increase. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Now, the wage study.
Okay, are we ready for wage study? All right, so this was approved by, again, the joint meeting on Friday. It provides up to $40,000 to contract for a wage study. This would create job descriptions and bring every employee, get every employee's comparable wages in the area. It's a way to make sure that everybody's fairly compensated. I know, and I have to say, there is some concern amongst the staff. Our department head for HHS expressed that earlier today. Other department managers do have that same concern. However, I personally feel this is a good thing for the county to do. I think it brings fairness and equity to all positions.
Clarence?
Recently, we spent somewhere around $30,000, I think, for a study of our health insurance program. Before that was done, we had a local insurance agent who said he would tell us exactly what we needed to do without cost. And that study came back saying the same things that he was saying about our health insurance program. And we spent $30,000 or whatever it was for an outside consultant to tell us what he would have told us for free. Terry Barningham made a suggestion that rather than paying this money out to an outside firm, that each department could do a wage study in their department. And it probably wouldn't cost us this amount of money.
That's a good idea.
Clarence, are you making that motion?
Point of
I
clarification.
would second that.
I
Point of
am not making
clarification.
a motion right now.
Hang on one second. We don't have a motion yet. Kathy and then Laura.
These work studies that they're making the county do, when we hired our new administrator, they charged us $17,000 to look for a new administrator. And we're spending a lot of money on things I think we could be handling here.
Go ahead, Laura. You're up.
Point of clarification on that healthcare, that we actually hired someone to actively manage our plan. They've already saved us more money than what we're paying them. They will actively go through and control our costs. They will negotiate contracts on our behalf. And they will actually, one of their first pieces was to get the kickbacks from the pharmacy folks to make sure. So this is a continual thing. They're not doing, it wasn't to just have a study. This is actually to have someone watching what our costs are all the time. If we had an HR manager, that's what this position would do. So basically we paid them to manage our healthcare plan because we don't have a full-time HR person. When it comes to a wage study, now, you guys have all seen those charts where there's step 1, step 2, step 3, and then how many years of service. This is to get everybody on the same plan. So it makes budgeting easier for everyone. It makes pay increases easier for everyone because it's already put out in a scale. Now, in order to get everybody up to the wages that they should have, that's what they do is they look at where everybody should be and show us where we should go with our wage scales. And then we can make a plan for over 3 years to get people to that spot. This is done outside of time. If we had someone that was an HR or we had an HR and a finance person, this is an in-depth thing that they do. It's not just a discussion. It's important to bring everybody into the same pay scale because right now, look at what we're doing. We're trying to piecemeal who's winners and who's losers in our wages. If we had a scale, when we said 2% increase, we could see on one chart where all these would go. But right now we're picking winners and losers. And there is not one employee inside that building or in any of our buildings that should have to fight for these merit increases or somebody else needs extra 2% or somebody hasn't gotten a raise in 3 years. If we had this on a scale and on a budget and on a timeline, we would be able to budget ahead of time, knowing what our increases are going to be. And as much as I know how much institutional knowledge our department heads have, it's good to pull them out of it, let them do their day-to-day and let someone else do that because it is a more fair structure across the board. I get where we want to save this money, but every time we try to save money, there's somebody on the losing end of that stick. We pull this out, we have a professional do it. It just makes more sense.
Matt, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to say let's not get mired down in the weeds here. What we're really doing here is establishing a policy or a directive for the administrator here to do a wage study. I think it's something that's probably long overdue. What's been said is that we can allocate up to $40,000 if need to be get this done. But I don't think we should be getting into the nuts and the bolts of how he's going to get that done. Let's give him a chance to come back and give us his opinion on how he can get this done. So I would suggest we just get to the basics on that, and that's to approve a wage study with money allocated, should it be needed, up to that amount of money. Maybe he finds out that it's going to cost more, maybe it's less, I'm sure we'll hear back from him what his plan is and how he's going to do that. So if we could just get back to approving this and moving on,
Is
please.
that a motion?
If that's a motion, I'll second that.
Is that a motion, Matt?
It's a motion to approve. I thought we already had one on the floor.
No.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve.
And who seconded it? Mike Berlin
Yes.
seconded it. Any more discussion? Pat?
Supervisor Nichols, correct on the healthcare. We hired a firm to help manage our costs. They should more than pay for themselves and help reduce costs. The county did get a grant from the state, I believe $25,000. I didn't turn on my mic, sorry. On the healthcare, we did hire a firm to help manage our costs. That should reduce our costs overall. We did get a grant from the state, I believe 25,000 to help develop a financial plan. So we got that money. And on the healthcare study, when I was younger, I didn't support these either. But one of the things I've learned over time was when you have these studies, you have a firm and people working to objectively write the job descriptions and the study. If we do it internally, there's either bias that creeps in unintentionally, or sometimes bias creeps in intentionally. And you have winners and losers based on who advocates for themselves better than others. So this should be fairer. We also need to make efficient staffing decisions going forward. We all know what the budget looks like. And a wage study will help us make efficient staffing decisions. So things change over time. The services the county provides, some are mandated, technology changes, et cetera. And so as budgets get tighter, being efficient on staffing is going to be really important. And then as an employee, I was reviewed annually. And what I realized from that process is, and you have to have a job description to have annual evaluations that mean something. And right now we don't have those job descriptions, so we're not doing annual evaluations. Annual evaluations to me are always good for the organization, and they're especially good for the employee. Because if you can sit down and meet with your supervisor and go through the job description, your performance, anything that you can tweak or do better, you know sooner than later. And so if I'm veering off on the wrong course and my supervisor says, hey, Pat, here's some things to think about, do this or stop doing that, the sooner I know, the sooner I can adjust course and be a more valuable employee. And most importantly was always to make sure I still had a job. So I think those evaluations help employees tremendously. You don't have to wonder if your supervisor, likes me or doesn't like me, or, how am I doing? I think it facilitates a communication that's really part of a healthy work environment. And yes, they can be a little uncomfortable sometimes, but I always found them really valuable.
Any more comments before we vote? Motion and a second to approve the wage study. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. Motion
Aye.
carries. Thank you. I think before we get up to our neck and budget, can we take a 5-minute break? I know it's getting late, but this probably is going to go on till 2 o'clock.
I'm just
Okay, I'm just going to leave it on. I'm going to leave it on for the rest of the day. I was trying to save the county some power. It's Mike.
On other non-mandated expenses, we had Mary here do a presentation today. In this budget, it reflects that we're taking $25,000 away from her and putting it over in someplace else. So in this budget here, it reflects that it's a deduction of $25,000. So does the board here need to act on that? What's your take?
If the board wants to change that movement of $25,000 from the chamber to AADC, then somebody would need to make a motion. Otherwise, AADC now gets $50,000 and the chamber gets $10,000. And if you look on page 1, there's the 2 yellow lines in the top third of the page. So yes, the board can reverse that decision, or they can If nobody wants to reverse it, then you can just leave it as is.
Yeah, I'd like to amend this budget to have that money put back into the Department of Tourism there, the Chamber of Commerce, from AADC.
I'd like to second that motion. This is Supervisor Shooty.
Can I make a point of clarification for everybody, just so you know? One thing that wasn't explained is the AADC line item was also changed to be a specific line item to AADC. In the past, any group was eligible to apply for that money. And the joint committee made it specifically for AADC this time, so nobody else can apply for it. So I just wanted everybody to know that before they voted on your motion.
We had talked about that at the Joint Executive and Finance Committee. And I don't know if it's time to bring this up. I was going to bring it up before. We had the jailers getting 12 something an hour. And I wanted to see that all full-time employees in Ashland County get at least $15 an hour. And as far as the jail staff, it would cost about $5,000 a year more. But I would say that we should, this, we're just talking about the budget, the proposed budget. I would propose that the minimum salary for Ashland County workers full-time would be $15. We spend more money training people and having them leave. I'd rather give them a decent, a better wage, not a decent wage, a better wage. So, I guess I would like to see that changed in the budget so that the minimum salary for a county employee full-time would be $15 an hour.
Mr. Metzinger, there are no employees that are under $15 an hour except for the cook in the jail and the part-time person in the jail. The only other people who are employed regularly make more than $15 an hour. There are a couple LTEs, summer help, that make less than 15, but nobody else. So it would cost $5,000 approximately to make all regular employees make at least 15.
Thank you.
Was that a motion, Bill?
Well, I don't know if you want to discuss all the changes first before we make one general motion, or?
Yeah, just the only question is, I wasn't sure if we could make a motion like that, or would the administrator know where we'd get the $5,000 in this budget?
The $5,000 would have to come from, it'd come from debt. Basically, in the short term, we take it from ARPA funding because we have extra ARPA funding that we're not using to fix the hole in this budget. I think I mentioned that earlier, that $360,000, we're using that cash to fix this budget. So we have extra funding. So that'll last us until we use it. But in the end, once you increase the base, it will come down to either some sort of levy increase.
I think we already have a motion by Matt and seconded by Kathy on the funding of the chamber. I don't know how many motions we can have on the floor at the same time. I mean, we should be discussing that one first.
Yeah, you should probably vote on that one first and then move to the next one, if there's going to be a lot of them.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, what is the amended budget for the AADC versus the chamber? Thank you.
Yeah, the AADC went from 25,000 to 50,000. The chamber went from 35,000 to 10,000.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. McKenzie's amendment is to undo that change so that AADC would get 25,000 and the chamber would get 35,000.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, when it comes to, and I know it got brought up in that joint finance exec committee meeting. AEDC operates as our economic development piece of our county. We do not have full-time staff. We don't have anybody at the county level that's working for it. That $25,000 is what goes to AEDC to fund economic development for our whole county. If we're taking that $25,000 back out, because at least $50,000 would give them the opportunity to have possibly another person to write grants, because right now, basically, it's a one-horse show. And while Carver does an amazing job with $25,000 and trying to just rob Peter to pay Paul and come up with the most creative things, as you decide that you're going to support this or not, then you need to think of, when we're talking about needing new streams of income for our county, supporting businesses and having support or creating more businesses or whatever, it is something that gives us long-term bang for our buck. I get, it's still another one of those things where we're picking winners and losers at this point. And the thing is it's one mode of economic peace against another at this point. But I'm hoping that we're going to have some other solution for this if we vote this through. Because another position at AADC would double the impact that they've been able to have for our county. And I'm not in support of moving this money back.
Well, John.
Yeah, I have a question on this budget here. It doesn't look like, I don't see any increase in the supervisors because we're driving an hour to get here and the price of gas has gone up to $3.50 a gallon. Has anybody ever considered about looking at the supervisors situations?
No, that was not considered. And if you want my best advice, I wouldn't do it till next year.
I think Rick agrees. He got a big smile on his face. Go ahead, Matt.
I guess I understand Supervisor Negro's concern about, the development corporation as well. I guess the other thing I could propose is if we look at stumpage and we see that we did not estimate as much stumpage as we have in the past. And I think we could take a chance on that and reduce that in a sense. Let me look. So the change in levy then would, instead of being a negative 75,000, I think would be a negative 50,000.
Mr. McKenzie, there's another option too.
I guess what I want to do, just to be clear, is I don't want to get to where we're trying to decide development corporation or, the Chamber of Commerce. I support them both. And if there's some way we can do them both, I'm all right with that.
There's a way we can do both for at least this coming year and then figure out a way to do it following years. If you look on the last page, on the bottom half is the condensed budget. You'll see on the right hand, you'll see on about halfway down, we're using $235,209 of the ARPA funding we just defederalized. So there's still, over $100,000 in ARPA funding that's going to be sitting in the county bank account that's ours now. You could take $25,000 from there and fund both of them for the next year at the levels that everybody wants.
Go ahead, Bill.
Does the defederalization money have to make any any qualifications, or is it just up to us how we can spend it?
The qualification on it was when we defederalized it in the first place. It was to reimburse us for a qualified expense.
Would this
So-
be a
so-
qualifying
No, the
expense?
mental health care stuff, the expenses with where the 359,000 came from was the qualified expense. So this is money that's coming, that we've already expended, that's coming back to us as a reimbursement. So the county board can do with whatever it wants with that 359,000. So, my goal was to save some of that for cash flow. But you could also, we're gonna have over 100,000 left. So you could use 25,000 to give AADC 50,000 and give the chamber 30,000. And then we'll try to spend the next year, figure out can we keep those levels up going forward? But this way, everybody wins. And hopefully the county truly wins with more development.
All right, Kathy.
I'd like you all to remember that the Chamber of Commerce, there are $35,000 they get from the Forestry Committee. Now you're going to take 25,000 and leave them with 10? How do you expect them to? They're bringing in 1.5 million a year with money, fresh money. So I don't think you're kicking the horse in the teeth.
Okay, Pat.
Well, that was a sale tax, and that's not all attributable to the chamber activity, and they said so. The key issue to me is we're underfunding the Ashland Area Development Corporation. The biggest problems facing Ashland County all have to do with economic development. We lost population, Bayfield County gained. And without population here, without business here, and good paying jobs, everything gets harder, and it's going to continue to get harder. So we do need to fund the ADC better. I think 30,000 for the chamber, given that they get over 300,000 in room tax from 2020, which is an off year for travel, at least in the hotels, because of COVID. It wouldn't surprise me if they get over 400,000 in room tax this year. The city hasn't been giving them anything for a decade, and yet a lot of that activity is right up here. I can see giving the chamber something more than 10. I think the 35 that was in the original budget. When I look at everything and listen to our employees, I'm not comfortable with the 35. But my suggestion is we vote this motion down, leave the ADC, the funding that's proposed, and then someone follow up with a motion on what they want to see to the chamber to fill that gap from something above 10 to, wherever you want to go with it.
Any more discussion?
Can we
The
recognize
executive director-
Carver?
Yeah,
Can we recognize Carver?
Up at the top there, Dick.
Who is it?
Carver from AADC.
Oh, okay, okay, AADC, you're on. Carver, you're on.
Lori, can you unmute Carver, please?
I think we're actually supposed to vote to suspend our rules to allow someone to speak.
I'll make
I'm
that
sorry,
motion.
this is Frantic. I have to go to work. Goodbye, everybody.
Dan, I am unable to, I can't unmute her. It's something on her end.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Hold on a second, Carver. There's a point of order.
I'll make the motion to allow Carver Harris to address the county board.
I will second that motion.
Aye.
I'm assuming that was a vote. Aye. Take your mics off again.
Okay, go ahead, Carver.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, first of all, I don't envy your jobs. This is the tough part of being a county supervisor. There's been many valid things said today from a lot of different departments and employers and county supervisors. And I know it's painful to have to make some of these choices. Personally, I'm uncomfortable with the thought of being pitted against the chamber for money that we both need. I support the Chamber of Commerce wholeheartedly. Those are some very, very hardworking folks. Many of the things that I do and they do, we complement each other continually in what we're doing. And that partnership is strong. And I don't think it should be mutually exclusive, like, you know, either AEDC gets the money or the chamber gets the money. We're working towards the same goals in the county. And I hate to see it being looked at as either the chamber gets it or AEDC gets it. So I hope that we can find a way, a creative way, so that both the chamber and AEDC can be funded at the level they need to be able to invest in the economic development future of Ashland County, because truly the chamber also does work on economic development. They just have different ways of tackling that than what I do. I do want to talk, and I want to acknowledge the hardworking employees at Ashland County throughout all the departments. I have absolutely nothing but support to offer to them in their quests to be able to be compensated fairly for the type of work that they do, especially during COVID. And I mean all employees in that respect. I just have a lot of admiration for how hard they've worked, and I support them fully in their quest to make sure that their departments are compensated fairly. There are a couple of things that I would like to point out and clarify, and hopefully that will help you come to some decisions and hopefully be creative in finding funding for these non-mandated programs such as economic development through AEDC and through the chamber. One is that I don't know if people remember, but AEDC received a cut. Well, I shouldn't say AEDC, economic development as a line item in your budget was cut back 2 years ago. It was at $30,000 and then it was brought down to $25,000. So we can't forget that economic development already took a cut a couple of years ago. And that was at the point that kind of that was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as me being able to fully fund the staff positions that I had. About that time, I had a staff member leave. They moved to the state of Minnesota, and I did not refill that position. So I'm short a staff member now because I can't fund it. Prior to that $5,000 cut, of course, we lost a big chunk of revenue and opportunities when the revolving loan fund program closed throughout the state. Some of you might remember that we lost the county, not the county government, but the county in general, with all of the revolving loan fund accounts that AEDC was managing. That meant that we lost, as an area, $2.3 million in revolving loan funds that was up to that point available to entrepreneurs and established businesses to grow their businesses. We lost that in the Ashland County area, 2.3 million. We still do have some revolving loan funds left, total about $400,000 right now that we manage. But that was a serious hit for our area. Connected with that, AEDC lost a lot of revenue for administering those accounts. So it was kind of a double whammy for our area. And between the cut of $5,000 from the county and the loss of those revolving loan fund administration fees, that's what made me have to make the decision to not hire our business services specialist position. And that's the person that does outreach throughout the county to help businesses and entrepreneurs throughout the county, that gives classes, training, does the business plan development consulting work, with our all of our entrepreneurs throughout the county. So Laura was right. I am doing double duty right now. I'm trying to fill both positions as best as I can. But so when we say if we had extra money that I would hire an extra person, no, what I would do is I would bring back the person that we lost when we lost all of this revenue. And they would also help me be writing grants. I have 3 grants that I'm working on right now for the month of October that I'll do at the end of October, plus the regular job that I'm working on. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of context because I know we have some newer members on the board that might not be aware of the history there. But I think I just really want to emphasize the fact that I do not want to compete with Ashland Area Chamber of Commerce because they're doing a fantastic job, and both AADC and the chamber are working towards the same goal, and that is bringing external money into the area to support our businesses and our entrepreneurs, and to bring in customers that are bringing in that fresh money through tourism. So thank you for letting me talk. I know this is a long meeting, and I thank you for giving me the generosity of some time to speak. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Not a question, but as I understand Matt's motion was that we reinstate the $25,000 that was taken away from the chamber back to the chamber and find a way to do it. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to take it away from AADC, and I don't suggest that we actually do that. We could do it by increasing stumpage by 25%. We could do it by increasing our estimate of sales tax by 25%. There are several ways that the Finance Committee could do that and put it back into the budget.
Well, yeah, as I was saying earlier, we're going to have $124,000 or $120,000 rather extra money that we just defederalized. So yes, you could take 25,000 from there and give it to either the chamber or AADC for this year. Going forward, yeah, we could change our sales tax estimate. That's purposely conservative. You know, we could change stumpage. That's purposely conservative also. So yeah, there are ways you can fund both of them going forward.
I'll make this quick because I know we're past the noon hour. So I have just a few points. I recently took a position at Bad River to work on economic development, and I jumped at taking the position because there is so much funding available right now. And it's earmarked for, there's a lot of it earmarked for tourism and to help stabilize the tourism industry. So now is the time to invest in organizations like the Chamber and AADC in order to really capture as much federal funding as possible, because there's a short window of time, it's going to be gone, and who knows what's going to happen after that. So I think it's really smart that we are working on, that we're looking at funding for both of these organizations from the county. I would suggest that we don't use defederalized funding, because you can use straight up ARPA funds to support small businesses and do the kind of things that AADC is doing. So instead, I would suggest that we conserve that defederalized funding for those types of budgetary needs that fall outside of the ARPA. But certainly figuring out a way that we can fund both of these organizations within the budget, I think would be advised.
Yes, I believe I've already said that. I don't mean to pit the two against each other. That's just where the money went. And then looking at this, I had suggested the stumpage. I think the ARCA money is also a good option, whether it can be directly ARCA or does it have to come from the defederalized? But the change I want to see is the chamber get back to their initial funding that they started with.
I'll put it on the finance committee agenda to come up with funding.
Whatever the group wishes is fine with me.
Dick? Can I call the question?
And point of order, there was no friendly second to that revised amendment. Who made the second to the initial motion? And do you accept as a friendly amendment, that change that Mr. McKenzie had stated? Okay, thank you.
Dick, your mic's off again.
When the hell, did you do that? Gotta watch this guy.
I was just gonna tell you that you bought lunch.
Oh, you just did that because it's lunchtime. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to fund the chamber at the amount requested. And this includes then the AADC.
The motion is to restore the funding for the chamber at 35,000. The money to be taken per finances wishes from either ARCA or defederalized or stumpage. Does that give you enough room, Dan?
Yeah, just as long as the finance committee can figure out a way.
Yep.
All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike. You're not on.
No, this is the recommendations to send back to the finance committee. Finance committee will look at this on the 14th. The executive committee will look at it on the 20th. And then final passage will be in November. I think the 7th or 8th.
Bill.
I would like to see, I would make a motion that the minimum wage for Ashland County employees be $15 an hour starting January 1st. Full-time workers.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to raise the employees' wages to $15 an hour. In discussion?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, that's full-time employees or
Full-time
all employees?
employees.
Okay, full-time employees.
Okay, if there's anything going on, I can't hear it.
What was the question?
Mr. Metzinger made a motion to raise the minimum wage of all full-time employees to $15 an hour.
Question then, how many people in the jail staff are part-time then and are gonna get stuck at that same wage?
One. One will be stuck at $13 an hour and then full-time will be at 15.
Would Bill do a friendly to just make that across the board since we're talking about one person's wage in the county?
Yeah, I would amend it to just the jail staff, because we do have some part-time people in the summer for the highway department. And I don't know what we want to do with those. So, but for now, the jail staff is underpaid really bad. So I would propose that jail staff be raised.
Could we say
full-time.
all permanent employees? Because isn't that position a permanent part-time?
Yes, it is.
Can I speak on this?
I'll second that.
Dan.
Let's go.
You got a second already,
Oh, you got a second?
Hey, way to go.
Philomena.
I make a motion that we recognize Ms. Mission to address this concern.
This is Laura. I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor already with a second. We should vote on that first. Yeah, okay, sorry, go ahead.
We have a motion and a second on the table to allow this young lady to speak on this subject. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Let's get.
Aye.
No, you got anything to say?
Yeah, I do. So there are 2 LTE staff for the Land Conservation Department that make $12 an hour during the season. There are usually about 5 staff part-time in the Highway Department that make $12 to $13 an hour. And the only staff over at the jail that makes there's one staff member that makes $12.75 right now. And when a correctional officer comes in, they are paid at 80% for training purposes. So that is roughly about $16.91 an hour for a part-time, and then they're bumped up to the $21.14 or $21.77 based on if they've been there a year or not. So those are, Dan, do you agree that?
Right, we only have 2 permanent staff people, 1.5 positions in the jail, actually in the county,
In the,
that are less than $15 an hour.
right,
So it'll cost a total of about $5,000 to raise them up to $15, including benefits and taxes and.
So couldn't we deal with that now and then worry about the highway part-time employees? We have a long time before we rehire.
Correct, you could, and somebody mentioned saying permanent employees. So you would not be including LTEs.
Okay. Bill,
I'd be willing to amend that motion to make it permanent employees.
I agree with that.
okay, the motion is to raise the wages of permanent employees from whatever, $12 and something an hour to $15 an hour. Is that right? And we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And if you got any discussion, save it. Yes, Pat.
I just want to mention a couple of things, and if anyone on the board wants to do anything with these, I'd be welcome to it. One is when we discussed the county fair earlier this year, we trimmed it to $10,000 after a half-hour discussion because it wasn't a fair a year ago. And so the budget is back at 20,000. And one of the things that we learned about the fair is there's $5,000 or $6,000 paid out to people that do work related to the fair. And Supervisor Campbell, you may recall, pointed out that lots of people volunteer to serve lots of organizations here. So one is, do we still want to put 20,000 into the fair or not? Or does someone want to propose something less? And then somewhat ironically, the extension office worked hard at reducing their budget by just over 3,000 in anticipation of cuts and hard budgets this year. And I'm personally a little uncomfortable with seeing extension work so hard to cut their budget primarily from travel, et cetera, by 3,000. And then there's other things that personally I would be more willing to cut. So do we want to restore extension and or do we want to adjust the fare?
Dick,
Kathy?
with the Ashland County Fair, they had 4 wonderful days at the fair this year. They had no rain. And what we would like to do is at the November meeting, the fair board would come and do a presentation of the money they earned this year and where they are, and like we did last year. I think that's what the full board needs to hear is from the fair board, Ashland County Fair Board meeting. So we'd like to be put on the agenda for November. I would have done, I can't do October, but I'm trying to get as many of the bills paid. There's electricity that has to be paid and stuff like that. So it'd be more accurate if we could do it in November.
I'd just like to say that the reason that the amount was cut last year because there was no fair. So we can't leave it at that amount. We have to restore it where it was. And I think this is just a little bit that we can do. That comment before that we're not doing anything for down county people. I think this is giving a little bit back. So I don't think that's a large amount of money, and I think it's really important that we restore that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
John?
Yeah, a question about the fairs. Obviously, we've been given Ashland County fair money, but you know, it's not fair for the other fairs that don't get any money. I mean, if you give out money to Ashland County Fair, you should be giving out the money to the rest of the fairs.
Any more comments?
Regarding extension, I guess if we're going to keep the fair money, and Supervisor Wiener, I brought that same issue up at the Joint Finance Exec Committee, and I think it's worthy of further discussion on that topic. But given extension's budget is tight already, and I want to propose that we restore the $3,008 that they had cut from their budget related to travel back into their budget, because really that's something that extension should be doing, related to professional development and part of their job. And I think they should still have that. So I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Pat.
I'll support Pat's motion.
All right. You want to read your motion again?
My motion is to, in the extension budget, they cut $3,008 primarily related to travel. That would be related to professional development. I'm proposing that we put that $3,008 back in the extension budget so that they're fully funded for what they would normally do.
We can't afford $3,000. We're really in bad shape. We have a second on that? Second by Mike Berlin. All those in favor of restoring the $3,000 to the ag and extension?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a suggestion to make too. I know people are still looking at this budget sheet. You can also, if you're not sure, you can contact me and I can make sure it gets on the finance committee agenda for the 14th.
Okay.
Or the executive committee for the 20th.
Dick, turn your mic on.
The Ashland City Council doesn't give money away. Well, they do, but they don't give it to people who deserve it. they pay $75 for a regular meeting and $50 for a committee of the whole. So when we have a full meeting, we get $125 a night and nobody has to travel. Now, this is a just complaint. If people coming from 30, 40, 50 miles out, at $50 is, I think that's ridiculous. And I'm not speaking on behalf of myself because I'm so far over the hill, I can't see the other side. But I think that those people that are just starting out or people who intend to stay here or whatever, should be compensated better. It's something for consideration. And you look like you're puzzled. Okay, now what are we gonna do about the remainder of the budget, Dan? What's your recommendation?
If there's no further questions or motions, I'd say if you have further issues after this, come to me and I'll put it on the finance agenda I get it by Friday or Thursday. And if not, I will put it on the executive agenda for the 20th. And then this whole board will get another crack again at the first meeting in November, which will be final passage.
So
if
we
you want-
we don't have to vote on this today then?
I'm sorry?
We don't have to vote on this today then?
Nope, no, you can move to the next item if there's no further.
I just have one comment that at the next finance meeting, we need to deal with finance. And after that is the executive meeting. We don't want to get caught up with this semantical thing that executive does this, finance does this, and I don't want to get in that tip war again.
It's just simply a matter of time. The finance committee meets on the 14th and the executive meets on the 20th. So it's really just a timing issue. It has nothing to do with turf wars or anything.
Okay. Any more discussion on the county budget or can we move along? Okay, moving right along. We can do the other two quickly. Resolution on lake monitoring.
Mary Jo's here if you have any questions.
This is for a grant that we are writing through the Land Conservation Department. This is a program that we've been implementing for the past 3 years already. And we are moving away from a grant required position to an annual contract with the DNR, which would be a non-competitive source of funding for us. And they require us to have a resolution to agree to do the work. So I'll go ahead and just read the resolution. And if there's any questions, I would entertain that. A resolution in support of Ashland County Conservation Lake Monitoring and Protection Network. Whereas Ashland County has more than 1,250 square miles of surface waters in the form of lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands, including 157 lakes, 1,700 miles of streams, and 153 miles of Lake Superior shoreline. And whereas the quality of these waters is being threatened by aquatic invasive species, and whereas Ashland County recognizes the importance of the quality of these waters to its citizens and local economies, and whereas the Ashland County Land and Water Conservation Department recognizes the need to maintain its education, prevention, and protection program through implementation of the Ashland County Aquatic Invasive Species Strategic Plan. And whereas Ashland County Land and Water Conservation Department is interested in obtaining funds from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources through the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network to cover wages and benefits, project materials, and costs related to the implementation of the county's Aquatic Invasive Species Strategic Plan. And now therefore be it resolved that the Ashland County Board of Supervisors, that the Ashland County Land and Water Conservation Department will meet the financial obligations necessary to fully complete the project and hereby authorizes the county conservationist to apply for the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network funding. And be it further resolved that the county conservationist shall sign the grant application, enter into a grant agreement with the DNR, and submit all reporting and grant reimbursement documentation to satisfy the grant obligations as Ashland County's designated agent. And be it further resolved that the Land and Water Conservation Department will comply with all local, state, and federal rules, regulations, and ordinances related to this project and the grant agreement. Dated at the City of Ashland, Wisconsin on this 5th day of October, 2021.
Thank you. Kathy,
I'd like to make a motion to adopt this resolution.
Marty. A motion and a second on the table to adopt this resolution. All those in favor say aye.
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 You want to talk about it, Matt? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just had one quick question, Mary Jo. Is there a match to this? And if so, is it covered either by in-kind work from your department or your budget?
There's no match required.
Aye.
Your mic's off again.
Turn his mic on.
Stop that. You guys keep your hands out of the pot. That just set me up. I want a microphone that doesn't ever turn off.
Just leave it on, Dick.
Put boxing gloves on. Is that what you're saying?
No, you just don't touch the buttons. Just leave.
I know. Okay, the resolution R10 2021-1397 honoring Joyce Pep Kabasa. Whereas Joyce Pep Kabasa has served as a 6th district supervisor on the Ashland County Board since April of 2002. And whereas Ashland County recognizes the excellent and dedicated service that Joyce Kabasa has rendered Ashland County during her term in office. And now thereby be it resolved that the Ashland County Board of Supervisors, on behalf of the entire county, extends a unanimous vote of thanks and appreciation to Joyce Pep Kabasa for 19 years of excellent and dedicated service she has provided to Ashland County. And be it further resolved that the Ashland County Board of Supervisors wish Joyce Kabasa health and happiness during all of her future endeavors. Signed this by this at the city of signed at the City of Ashland on this 5th day of October 2021.
Motion to approve?
Second.
I'll second it.
There
I
was a
did.
second.
I did.
Oh, Kathy can.
She looked like she's gonna fight you for it.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. Your mic's off again.
I think I have malfunction here.
No, I think we covered all my updates during the meeting.
I don't know if we're going to get into the county supervisor reports. The only thing that I have to report just quickly was Kathy and I and Laura and Dan went down to the WCA conference. The one thing that I got out of it that really spun my wheels was regardless if 75% of the counties in Wisconsin want to raise the gas tax or raise the sales tax to get us out of the hole, it goes before a hand, I don't know, they're not hand-picked or they're volunteers, but the committee that we're all welcome to be a part of. They made it very clear that they can shoot down, no matter what the consensus is, a handful of people can shoot that down. And what happened with us is all the requests for those kind of increases were just thrown under the bus. They weren't even discussed. So I raised a little bit of hell about that, and just for your information, and I don't know how Dan figures we would handle this monetarily or whatever. Anybody from our board who would like to serve on that committee, they're open for applications at all times. What? You can? I think you should volunteer then. Then we can just get on your case. Okay, that's all I got. Don't forget to drop off your vouchers. And
Dick? One
Yes.
quick thing. I would like to thank this county board for voting to put in the new microphones and the new TV screens because this is much, much better. I'm done speaking.
yeah, even though there's no directions with these microphones, it's much better. Okay, next on the agenda, I guess the supervisor's reports. I don't think we have any, so we can get out of here. Motion to adjourn would be in order. Motion by Bill. Seconded by Rich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.